All right, this is day 3 of Unit 6. We're going to do frequency distribution notes, just basically talking about different types of graphs that we can use to show frequency. Frequency distribution is organizing data in table form using classes and frequencies. So like classes is a quantitative or qualitative category. A class can range from a numbers or an actual category. So like, for example, quantitative, obviously that means quantity. So that's talking about numbers, measures, or counts that represent. So like how many, how much, how often, like how many pairs of shoes do you have? That's a quantitative question because it's asking you how many. It's asking you for a number for an answer. Qualitative is the measure of types and may be represented by a name, symbol, or number code. So like, for example, how many people own Jordans versus Nikes? That's a qualitative question because you can ask somebody, do you own Jordans, Nikes, or both? That would be a qualitative question. Frequency is the number of data values contained in a class. So like basically frequency means how many times that shows up. So the first type of frequency table we can talk about is bar graphs. Bar graphs are specifically for qualitative data, basically saying how many of something happening. So like, for example, favorite type of movie, comedy, action, romance, drama, sci-fi. You're not asking them how many movies they're seeing, you're asking them what kind. So that's a qualitative thing. So whenever you create a bar graph, you got to have your two axes, okay? Your x-axis is always what we're talking about, the topic. So we're going to talk about the comedies. We've got the action, the romance, drama, and then sci-fi. Okay? That's always what topic we're talking about on your x-axis. Your y-axis is the value, the actual value of how often that's happening, your frequency. So whenever you create that, you always want to think in mind about when you make your axis up here, how often you want to go into. Do you want to go in increments of 1, 2, 5, or 10, or even hundreds, depending on what it's actually asking for. So because my smallest number is 1 and my largest number is 6, I'm just going to go in increments of 1. So that would be 1, and you want to try to make sure they're as like evenly separated as you can. I know you're not going to be perfect at it if you don't have like if you don't have like a ruler or some graph paper. Graph paper will be perfect for that. It would help you out a lot with writing these. 5, 6. Okay, and then with the bar graphs, you just create a bar for each one. So like comedy is got 4 as their favorites. So we just create a little bar for comedy. I always like to actually write the value on top. You don't have to do this, but I like to write the actual value so they know what we're looking at. So the comedy has 4. The action has 5, so we'll go up to here. Go right about where the 5 is. Create another bar. And when you're doing these, you can decorate it as much as you like. You can sit there, fill in the bars with all your pretty colors for my color people, or just draw like a design inside each bar or whatever, or you can just leave them blank. It doesn't matter to me. Romance is 6. So romance goes all the way up to here. Let it be quiet, baby. So that goes all the way up to there. And then drama only had 1 person, so only 1 person liked drama movies. And then sci-fi had 4. So we're up here at 4. Okay. And bar graphs are really good for just giving us a visual representation of like being able to answer questions. So like this, I can easily see that romance is the popular type of movie, and then action and comedy and sci-fi are tied up, and then drama is the least favorite. I mean, you can look at it, you can kind of see it with the numbers, but the bar graphs gives you a visual representation to show you, okay, romance is obviously the popular one, and so on. Okay, so then that's just how you create those bar graphs with that one. So then we got another example where we have 145 people, and we ask them which is the nicest fruit. I don't know what they mean by nicest, unless they mean like best tasting. I don't know, whatever. I didn't make it, so. Then we got apple, orange, banana, kiwi fruit, blueberry, and grapes, okay? So, and then it's got how many people voted for each one. So again, we're gonna create our bar graph. And so we got apple, orange, banana, kiwi, blueberry, and grape. Okay, and notice that my smallest number is 5 and my largest number is 40. So I'm not going to want to go in increments of 1 for this, okay? What I think would probably be best is to go in increments of 5 because you have 5, 10, 25, 30, and so on. So that will be easier to graph a bar graph for than it would be to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to 40 because then our bar graph would be all the way up to here. So I'm going to start going in increments of 5. So we got 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. Okay, so then we just want to create our bars for each one. So apple had 35, so we'll go up to here at 35. And then we've got that orange was at 30. So we'll go at that 1 increment less than apple. So we got that 30. Banana only had 10. Kiwi fruit had 25. And then blueberry had 40. I love blueberries. Go all the way up to the top for 40. And then grapes had 5. So they were all the way down here at the bottom. And again, you can easily answer questions about this because you can see, okay, blueberries got the most votes, then apple, then orange, and so on. With your information. So what you'll be doing is you'll be given these bar graphs and you'll answer questions saying like which is the most popular or what's the difference between how many people liked blueberry versus how many people like banana, and you would just say, oh, that would be 30 because you could take 40 minus 10 and say that there was 30 more people that like blueberry over banana, and all those good types of questions. Okay, all right, so then I'm going to flip over to the next page. And we're going to talk about histograms. Histograms are similar to bar graphs, but not quite. So histograms are more for qualitative data, and histograms use frequencies and intervals histograms usually have more data than just those like 5 different options. So like here, we have all these different data points. And so it automatically gave me this intervals. You won't always be given the intervals. You might have to create your own interval sometimes. And you'll use the data to say, okay, am I going to go from 1 to 20, 1 to 10, 1 to 5, and so on. So notice our intervals go from 1 to 20, 21 to 40, 41 to 60, 61 to 80, and 81 to 100. Those are our intervals. So we're going to take these data points and we're going to, in the frequency column, we're going to tally up how many of each happens. Okay, so for 50, that goes within my 41 to 60 range. So you would tally that one out. And I just like to cross them out as I do them. So 42 would go here again. 119, now that goes above. I'm going to create another column for 101 to 120. I don't know why it didn't give you that extra column, but whatever. We're going to create one. So 119 goes in that very last row. 45 is between 41 and 60. 68 is between 61 and 80. 32 is between 21 and 40. 67 is between 61 and 80. 111 is between 101 and 120. 61 is between 61 and 80. 31 is between that 21 and 40. 75 goes between that 61 and 80. 39 goes between 21 and 40. 62 goes between the 61 and 80. 64 goes in the same one. 49 goes between the 41 and 60. 55 goes between the 41 and 60. 51 goes between the 41 and 60. 33 goes between 21 and 40. 117 goes in my top one. 96 goes between 81 and 100. 64 goes in between 61 and 80, and then 82 goes between 81 and 100. So those are our tallies for every single data point there, okay? And we just want to list what that total frequency was. So that means that it happened for 1 to 20 was 0 times, okay? Between 21 to 40 was 4 times. Between 41 to 60 was 6. Between 61 to 80, that was 7. 81 to 100 was 2. And 101 to 120 was 3, okay? And if you look down here, cumulative frequency is the total amount of data. And cumulative just means we add up all the points. So we've got 0 plus 4 plus 6 plus 7 plus 2 plus 3. And that gives us that there's 22 data points. That's our cumulative frequency. And you can also count these: 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 22. Ooh, did I miss some? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. No, 20, 22. Yep, 22 total. Okay? So that's whenever it asks you for the cumulative frequency, all it's asking for is how many data points do we have total. So you would add up all the frequency points. Okay? Relative frequency is the individual frequency, so each interval divided by our cumulative frequency. So like for example, relative frequency of my first one, that would be 0 divided by 22. So that relative frequency would just be 0. Okay? For the next one, that would be 4 over 22. And we're going to use 2 decimal places. And that's going to give us 0.18. Okay? And we do the same thing with the rest of our column. So our relative frequency is 6 out of 22. Which gives us 0.27. 7 out of 22 gives us 0.32. And then 2 out of 22 gives us 0.09. And then 3 out of 22 gives us 0.14. And a way to know that you've done your relative frequency is that all of these columns, because it's a certain portion of the whole entire thing, just add them all up. And as long as all those decimals add up to 1, you know you did everything right. So if I do 0.18 plus 0.27 plus 0.32 plus 0.09 plus 0.14, gives us 1. And if it's like 1.1 or 1.01 or something like that, that's just because of rounding, and you still know that you're right because it's really, really close to 1. So because all of those add up to 1, that means we know we did everything right with our relative frequency. Okay, so I'm going to do 2 tables here. So make sure you're prepared for me to create, for yourself to create 2 different tables. Okay, so first I'm going to create the actual histogram itself. And then I'm going to create a relative frequency histogram. Okay, so for my first one, I'm going to create just a regular histogram off of our data points. Okay, and so we got 1 to 20, we've got 21 to 40, 41 to 60, 61 to 80, and then 81 to 100, and then 101 to 120. Okay? Now, the difference between a bar graph and a histogram is that with a histogram, all of your bars are connected to each other, versus a bar graph, all of them are separate bars, versus these are big bars all together. Okay, so let me create, we go from 0 to 7, so I'm just going to give them all individual, go by increments of 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so between 1 and 20 is at 0, so we don't have to create a bar there because there is nothing there to graph. Between 21 and 40, we're at 4, so we're going to go all the way up to 4. Between 41 to 60, we had 6, so that means I'm going to go up to 6. Now we start at our first bar, and we go all the way over to here. So that was 4 and that was 6. Okay. Between 61 to 80, there was 7. So we'll go up one more for 61 to 80. So we always connect those bars together. Now, I know some of y'all like to get sloppy about when y'all do stuff like this. So make sure you know that your histograms, if they're not connected, it's not right. I'm assuming you don't know what a histogram is, because histograms have those bars connected to each other. Okay. With 81 to 100, there was only 2. So we're at 2 here. And at 101 to 120, we had 3. So we'll go up one more for 3. Okay. Now, the difference between a bar graph and a histogram is a bar graph tells you specifically, okay, I had 5 people vote for banana. Versus 21 to 40, you have 4 people that had any of the numbers. Let's see, what were we talking about? Chocolate candies per bag of trail mix. So that means I had anywhere between 21 to 40 happen 4 times on the graphing with that histogram. Okay, so that means it could be anywhere. So that's the only thing it doesn't tell you specifically. Oh, they had 21. Oh, they had 30. They just had anywhere between 21 and 40 pieces of chocolate in their bag. Okay, so the histogram, that's what that tells you. That it still tells you that a lot of people had between 61 and 80. That's good whenever you have a wide variety of data, more so. Okay. So with your relative frequency, we're going to create another table. All right. Still have the same columns, 1 to 20, 21 to 40, 41 to 60, 61 to 80, 81 to 100, and 101 to 120. Okay. But this time all of our numbers are in decimals. So we have anywhere from 0 to 0.32. So I'm going to go I'm probably going to go in increments of 0.5, I guess. Yeah, 0.5. Good. Sounds good. 0.5. So then that next one would be 0.10. Then 0.15, 0.20, 0.25, 0.30, 0.35. Okay, we're talking about in decimals. And then these decimals also represent a percentage, because look, if you took this 18.18, that's the same thing as 18% of my data was between 21 and 40. So that also helps you. Okay, so between 1 and 20, we were still at 0. At 4 to 22, we were at 0.18. So that's going to be somewhere in between 0.15 and 0.20. So we'll be right somewhere in between those two. And that's why I like to write the actual number on top. Again, you don't have to. But that's why I like to write the actual number on top. And then 41 to 60. Did I miss something? No. 41 to 60 at 0.27. So that's a little bit over 0.25. And you're still creating these histograms. It's a relative frequency histogram. So you still connect your bars together. All right, 61 to 80 had 0.32. So we're a little bit below that 0.35 mark. Uh, 81 to 100 had 0.09. So that's right below that 0.10. And then 0.14 for 101 to 120. So 0.14 would be right below that 0.15 mark. And so that just tells you what percentage of each bag had, or what percentage of your total had those amounts. So like 32% of my bags had 61 to 80 chocolates in it. 9% of my bags had 81 to 100, and so on. All right, so that's a histogram and then a relative frequency histogram. And we're going to do the same thing here, talking about temperature in degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, so we're still got to create our frequency, so we have to tally up our numbers. So we have 63, so that's going to be between the 60 and 64. 70 goes here. 64. 71, 70, 62, 68, 67, 68, 72, 65, 62, 59, 58, 60, 59, 56, 53, 51, 55, 56, 50, 53, 57, 55, 50, 46, 49, 46, 52, and 48. So I just tallied up all of my data points into each frequency. Okay, between 40 and 44 we had 0. Between 45 and 49 I have 4. Between 50 to 54 I have 6. Between 55 to 59 I have 8. Between 60 to 64 I have 5. And 65 to 69 I have 4. And my last one I also have 4. Okay, and again, to get our cumulative frequency, all we have to do, frequency, all we have to do is add up all of our data. So we have 0 and then 4 plus 6 plus 8 plus 5 plus 4 plus 4. So that means we had 31 data points total. Okay, so that helps us with finding our relative frequency. Okay. So we'll find our relative frequency by taking each one and dividing by 31. So 0 divided by 31 gives me 0. Then we do 4 divided by 31 gives me 0.13. 6 divided by 31 gives me 0.19. 8 divided by 31 gives me 0.26. 5 divided by 31 gives me 0.16. 4 divided by 31, we've already did up here, that gives me 0.13 again. And again, my last one again would be 0.13. Okay, and again, to find out and make sure we did that right, we just add all of the decimals up. And that adds up to 1, so I know I did everything right there. Okay, so again, to find our frequency histogram, okay, our actual histogram, we're going to create a table again, just like we did before. Okay, and we've got 40 to 44. 45 to 49, 50 to 54, 55 to 59, 60 to 64, 65 to 69, and 70 to 74. All right, and our increments go from anywhere from 0 to 8, so again, I'm going to go in increments of 1 again for this one. All right, so between 40 and 44, we were at 0, so there's no bar that goes there. Between 45 and 49, we have 4, so I'm going to go up to where 4 is and create my little histogram there. Okay, between 50 and 54, I had 6, so I'm going to go up to 6. And then 55 to 59, I had 8. So we go all the way up to the top there. '60 to 64, we had 5. So we'll go to 5 there. So a little bit below that 6 mark. Between 65 to 69, we had 4. So we're back at 4 again. And then we had 4 again in 70 to 74, so they're going to stay at the same level. Okay, so that is my actual frequency histogram. Okay, so the next table down here will be my relative frequency. And that's when we use our percentages here. Okay, and that one goes up from 0 to 26 or 0.26. So I think I'm going to use increments of 0.4 this time, just because it seems to go more of like a point, really close to the 0.4 increments. Okay, so again, I'm going to list out on my x-axis 40 to 44, 45 to 49, 50 to 54, 55 to 59, 60 to 64, 65 to 69, and 70 to 74. Okay. And again, I said that we were going to go increments of 0.4. So I'm going to do 0.4, 0.8, 0.12, 0.16, 0.20, 0.24, and then 0.28. Okay, and you could have technically gone in increments of 0.5 like we did in the last one. I just saw that the 0.13s are close to 0.12, 26 was close to like that 24 range, and 19 was close to the 20. So it just made, to me, it made more sense to go in increments of 4. So, all right, so for my first one, again, we were at 0 there. 4 to 31, we were at 0.13. Or 45 to 49, sorry, we were at 0.13, so that's a little bit over that 0.12 mark. So we're a little bit above there. Okay, and then at 50 to 54, we were at 0.19, so that's a little bit below that 0.2 increment, so that's 0.19. At 55 to 59, we were at 0.26, so almost a quarter of, or over a quarter of my data was between 55 to 59. And what we're talking about, our temperature was anywhere between 55 to 59. So that was a quarter of the time we had, or 26% of the time we were between the temperatures of 55 to 59. 60 to 64 was at 0.16, so we go right there. 65 to 69, we were at 0.13. And at 70 to 74, we were at 0.13 again. So again, 13% of our data was in between these 3 increments. So if you added that up, that means that 39% of the time it was anywhere between 45 to 49 and then 65 to 74. The rest of the time it was between these 3. Okay, so that's a good thing to be able to answer questions. Like if it asks you for a percentage of the time, you can find the relative frequency and say, okay, 26% of the time we were in between 55 to 59 degrees. Okay. All right, and then we have what's called a frequency polygon, which is really close to a histogram, but not quite, okay? So a frequency polygon is a graph constructed using lines to join the midpoints of each interval or bin. The midpoint of a bin is calculated by adding the upper and lower boundaries values of a bin by dividing the sum by 2. Basically, what it means is you're going to take a histogram. You're going to take these histograms, and you're going to go right in the middle, and you're just going to create a dot, and you're going to create a dot in the middle of each bin and connect those to create a graph. Okay, you can draw the histogram part, but the actual frequency polygon is where you connect those dots at themselves. Okay, so for this first one, I'll go create the actual histogram and then connect the dots, and then the next one we won't. So this one is the chocolate candies per trail mix. So I'm going to do the same, just use that same histogram we did before. Okay, let me pull that paper back up. There it is, okay? So I'm literally just gonna copy this histogram we did before. $120, $21 to $40, $41 to $60, $61 to $80, $81 to $100, and $101 to $120, okay? And we had in increments of 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. And I like to just draw little lines for my frequency bins to know that these are my 81 to 20 and so on. Okay. So then we had that our first column was at 0. So between 1 and 20, right in the middle, I'm going to be at 0. Okay. At 21 to 40, I was at 4 up here. We were at 4. So I'm going to go up to 4. And right in the middle of 21 and 40, I'm going to create that. You can create a histogram like we did, but you don't have to create the histogram. You just have to know that it's right there in the middle is where you put that dot. Okay, 41 to 60, we were at 6. And again, you can relabel the top, that's up to you, but at this point, you can just kind of connect the dots. At 61 to 80, we were at 7. So you connect the dots again in the middle. At 81 to 100, we were at 2. And again, we connect our dot. And then our last one was at 3. So we go up to here at 3. All right. And then just to create your frequency polygon, all you do is connect the dots. Excuse me, my allergies are killing me. And then at your last point, you just draw a line straight down to the end. So this right here is called a frequency polygon, where the actual shape that it gets created from your histogram. Okay, the actual boxes itself are not part of the frequency table. That just kind of helps you with creating it. So on the next example, I'm not going to actually create the boxes. I'm just going to put the dots together so you can see what it's supposed to look like. Okay? So then, oh, I didn't fill out the table. That was at 0, 4, 6, 7, 2, and 3 for 80, 101 to 120. And you don't have to fill out anything there. That was just extra. Okay. So that was our frequency polygon there. And so then for our last example, again, we're going to create another frequency polygon for the daily high temperatures, which again, we did over here with the frequency histogram here. I didn't feel like making a whole new set of data for you to have to create and all that. It's just easier to reuse the same data we already have. So before we had 0, 4, 6, 8, 5, 4, and 4. Okay? So then we're going to create our table again. And so between 40, and sometimes with frequency polygons, a lot of times they want you to actually create kind of like a plot. So because we're starting at 40, you're going to create kind of a break, is what that's called, to like let you know that you're skipping everywhere from 0 up until 40. And then we go 44. So that still creates, 44, that still creates that little range, but instead of you writing 40-44, it creates that little space that's saying my frequency is in between those. And then the next one was 49, and then 54, and then 59, and then 64, and then 69, and then 74. Okay, and so again at 40 to 44, we were at 0. So right in the middle between 40 and 44, you would put your dot. It's always in the middle. It's never at 40 or 44. It's always right in the middle between our two frequencies, okay? And then 44 to 49, we were at 4. Oh, I forgot to write my little label over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so we were at 4 for the first, for that next one. So 4 right in between 44 and 49. This is a lot easier when you have graph paper, but of course I don't have any graph paper to do this on. So I'm kind of guesstimating that's right around where the 4 line is. Okay, at 49 or 50 to 54, we were at 6. So right at 6, I'm gonna go in the middle of 49 and 54. So right about here would be that middle point. And then we have 8 between 54 and 59. We'd be at the very top of our graph. And you can kind of create your own lines if you're good like that. Most of the time my lines end up crooked, so it doesn't really matter either way. It's going to be a little bit off. Between 60 and 64, we were at 5. So at 5, I'm right about here. 65 to 69, we're back at 4. So right about there. And then we were at 4 again for 70 to 74. So right in the middle there. So my frequency polygon would start here, and we would just connect all of the dots. And then at the very end, we would just go down there at the end. Okay, and that's how you create a frequency polygon. It's just like a histogram, except for you're not creating all those bars. You're just putting a dot right in the middle between each increment. Okay, so then for your classwork, you're going to create a bar graph for 1 and 2, okay, based off of the information it gives you, and it tells you that you're using music. So you got rock, jazz, country, top rock, or top 40, and rap. And then down here, you're creating a histogram. So you're going to have to create your own intervals on this one. So that's up to you. Look at the numbers. What I do is I look at the smallest number and the biggest number and figure out what would be the easiest increments to create. So that's up to you on your increments. Okay, on the next page, you're given a histogram and you have to answer the questions and fill out what each one of these tells you. So what is the weight, and you can use down here to tell you the weight increments. Remember, notice on all of my histograms, and this is how histograms always work, is your increments never overlap. So you don't say, for example, 41 to 44 and then say 44 to 49. You would say 41 to, or 40 to 44, 45 to 49, and then the next number up, and so on. So make sure you keep that in mind when you're creating that weight. And then your tally and your frequency are the same thing. You just actually writing tally marks, and then here's where you add up the tally marks, and then tell me what the relative frequency is. And then here, same thing. You're given a table. You have to tell me what the increments are and all of that good stuff. And then here you're given some bar graphs, and you're going to just answer all the questions. The answers just go over here in this right column. That's all you have to do there for both sides. You just take the bar graph and answer whatever questions it is. All right, if you have any questions, again, just comment on the video or on the actual post in the Google Classroom or all that good stuff. On the next day, we'll talk about box and whisker plots. Okay, those are really easy. So, bye.